Welcome to the deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
Ever wonder if, when you like to wake up says something deep about you?
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're really diving into morning larks versus night owls, or what some people call the early crowd, the 5 a.m. club.
Right, that whole movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've pulled together some really interesting research looking at, everything.
Hmm.
How your body clock hits your productivity, your creativity, even your social life.
It covers a lot of ground.
It does. And if you're someone who likes to get up to speed on something fast, like really understand it, think of this as your shortcut, your fast track to getting these two lifestyles.
That's a good way to put it, because what we're really discussing here are chronotypes.
Chronotypes, yeah.
It's basically our built-in preference for sleep times and when we feel most awake.
Mm-hmm.
The classic lark up at dawn versus the owl who really gets going later. And it's not just like a habit you pick up. Our sources are pretty clear. There's a strong biological component. There's even a gene, PER3, that's linked to being more of a morning person. It runs deeper than just, preference.
Exactly. It's not just deciding to set your alarm clock way earlier. So, okay, our mission today is to unpack all of this.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look at how being an owl or a lark
Mm-hmm.
affects, well, your productivity, how creative you feel, your health, both physical and mental, how it fits with your job, your social stuff.
And the science behind it all.
Right, the underlying biology.
Yep.
We want to figure out the good bits of each, and maybe even how you could potentially blend them a little, get the best of both.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, let's jump in.
Right. Let's kick things off with productivity. That's usually top of mind for
Sure.
people.
Always.
And the research we looked at shows a really clear difference in when each type hits their peak. Early birds. They're usually sharpest in the morning. Think maybe 7 a.m. to noon-ish. That's often when they'll, hit the gym, blast through emails, tackle the really tough mental work.
Okay, but for the night owls out there, and I definitely lean this way, sometimes mornings can feel like wading through mud. Seriously.
Oh, yeah, the morning fog is real.
It is. But then as the day goes on, things start clicking. And that real productive flow often hits late afternoon or definitely in the evening. For me, that deep focus happens when things quiet down outside.
And that timing difference naturally shapes how people work, right?
Mm.
Early risers often front-load their day. They do the critical analytical stuff when they're at their best in the morning. Then maybe shift to easier, more routine things later on.
Okay.
Night owls, they might do the opposite. Maybe use the morning for admin tasks, just getting the engine running, and then save those late night hours for the deep work, the complex problems, the creative bursts.
It's so crucial to stress, though, like our sources kept saying, that neither one is automatically more productive overall.
Yep.
There's this stereotype, right? That night owls are just lazy or procrastinating.
Yeah, that's a persistent one.
But it's just not true if they can work with their natural rhythm. I saw one quote saying, experts agree night owls can be every bit as productive when they're given the freedom to structure their workdays.
Exactly. It's all about alignment, matching the task to your energy.
Right.
But of course, there are trade-offs for both. Early risers get that morning calm, fewer distractions maybe, and they sync up nicely with typical 9 to 5 hours.
True.
The downside, maybe their energy tanks in the evening. They might miss out on later social things or just relaxing time.
Okay, and for night owls?
Well, they get that late day energy surge, which is great for productivity then. But they often battle early mornings, appointments, societal expectations.
The world isn't really built for them schedule-wise.
Not typically, no. That can be a real struggle.
So basically, early risers rock the morning hustle, fit the standard mold. Night owls own the late shift, finding focus when others are winding down.
That sums it up pretty well.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. What about creativity and cognitive performance?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. There is a big UK study, 2024, over 26,000 people.
Wow.
And it found that night owls actually tended to score higher on things like memory, reasoning, processing speed, sometimes 7 to 13% higher.
Seriously?
Higher. Yeah, and interestingly, in that specific study, the morning larks actually had the lowest scores.
Oh, okay, that flies in the face of some common ideas.
It does. But, and this is important, our sources also point out that when you test someone matters. a lot.
Ah, right. Like give an early bird an 8 a.m. test.
Exactly. They'll probably ace it compared to a night owl who's barely functional at that hour.
Okay, that makes sense. And that probably explains why morning types often do better in school, right? Classes, exams, they're usually in the morning.
Precisely. But then if you look specifically at creativity, like thinking outside the box, divergent thinking,
Yeah.
the research often leans towards night owls having an edge there. Lots of famous creatives, James Joyce, Kanye West, Lady Gaga, known night owls. Something about those late, unstructured hours seems to spark innovation for them.
Maybe less pressure, fewer interruptions.
Could be. And it might tie into personality, too. Morning types often score higher on conscientiousness, being organized. Evening types tend to score higher on openness to experience.
Which is linked to creativity.
Got it. But here's a really cool finding from Weith and Zaks. They called it the off-peak creativity boost.
Off-peak, meaning?
Meaning, both morning and night types were actually found to be more creative during their worst time of day.
Get out. How does that work?
The theory is when you're a bit groggy or less mentally sharp, your logical brain maybe lets its guard down a bit, less inhibition, more room for weird, novel ideas to pop up. So like a night owl wrestling with a tough problem might actually get a breakthrough trying it first thing in the morning, even if they feel awful.
That's wild. Yeah. It's like the fuzziness helps you see differently. Okay, what about other brain functions? Memory, analysis.
Well, generally, morning people tend to show better working memory and analytical skills earlier in the day. Good for structured learning, like we said.
Right.
Night owls often report feeling clearer mentally later on. Better for complex problem solving, maybe strategic thinking, even basic stuff like reaction times seem to be better for each group when tested at their preferred times.
So it's kind of a trade-off again. Early birds might nail the morning meetings and structured tasks. Night owls might shine with creative projects and deep thinking later on.
Seems that way. It's about different strengths at different times.
Okay, let's move into health. Physical and mental. This feels really important.
It is. And there are some definite patterns, according to our sources. Early risers often get more morning sunlight, good for mood, good for setting that body clock. They also tend to have more regular sleep and meal times. Night owls, though, are more prone to what's called social jet lag.
Social jet lag. Explain that.
It's basically that chronic tiredness from having your natural sleep time cut short by societal schedules. You know, your body wants to sleep till 10 a.m., but you have to be up at 7 for work. That gap causes fatigue.
Right. Like feeling constantly jet lagged, even though you haven't flown anywhere.
Exactly. And that seems to have knock-on effects.
Like what?
Well, some research links being an evening type to higher risks for things like obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome.
Oh, wow. Why is that?
It could be a mix of things. Maybe skipping breakfast, eating later at night, getting less sleep overall on work days because of that social jet lag. One study from the Sleep Foundation even linked evening types to more sleep apnea, mental health issues, and metabolic problems.
Again, pretty concerning.
It does. But it's really important to stress these are trends. You can absolutely be a healthy night owl.
Right. It's not automatic.
No. But the societal pressure, the schedule mismatch, it does seem to put extra strain on night owls biologically. It makes staying healthy maybe a bit harder if you're not careful.
Okay. What about mental health? Depression, anxiety, that sort of thing?
Yeah, historically, some studies have suggested night owls report higher rates of depression and anxiety. There was a Stanford medicine survey mentioning this link to psychological disorders for late types.
And is that biological, or is it the lifestyle again?
It seems like lifestyle and sleep quality are huge factors. That inconsistent sleep, the sleep deprivation from social jet lag, that can definitely impact mood.
Makes sense.
But interestingly, that same Stanford study found something positive. Night owls who managed to shift their bedtime a bit earlier, say closer to 1 a.m., not crazy early, actually reported better mental health.
Ah, so it's maybe less about being an owl and more about getting enough quality sleep consistently.
That seems to be a key message, yeah. Good sleep is crucial, whatever your chronotype. Prioritizing it makes a big difference for mental well-being.
So, summing up health.
Yeah.
Early risers seem to have it a bit easier because society's schedule fits them better.
Generally, yes. They often align more easily with routines that support health.
And night owls face more hurdles, mainly because of that mismatch and the potential for lost sleep.
That seems to be the main driver of the negative health trends seen in some studies. Good sleep habits are the great equalizer, really.
Got it. Okay, let's talk careers. The professional world. How does chronotype play out there?
Well, the traditional 9 to 5 world is, let's face it, built for early risers.
Pretty much.
They're alert in the morning, ready for those early meetings. They often get seen as, more proactive, more disciplined, just because they're visible earlier.
While the night owl strolling in at 10 might get side-eye.
Exactly. There's often that unfair assumption, like our sources mentioned, that late starters are lazy.
Which is totally wrong if they're actually productive later on.
Completely. And night owls can perform brilliantly, maybe even better if they have flexibility. But stick them in a rigid 9 to 5?
Yeah.
That constant fight against their internal clock can lead to burnout or just not performing as well as they could.
And what about the early birds? Any downsides for them at work?
Well, yeah. They might peak early and then really fade in the late afternoon. Evening networking events or jobs requiring late hours can be tough for them.
Fair enough. Are there specific jobs or fields that suit each type better?
Our sources suggest some patterns. Night owls might thrive in roles needing late-hour work IT support, maybe certain global business roles, entertainment, tech, design, hospitality.
Things that don't stick to strict daytime hours.
Right. Whereas early risers might naturally fit better into fields like finance, education, healthcare, agriculture, maybe the military. Things that often start early.
What about running your own business?
Entrepreneurship. That seems like it could work for either, really. Depends on how you structure your business and your own work style. Offers that potential flexibility.
I like this idea I saw mentioned chronodiversity in the workplace.
Yes. That makes so much sense, doesn't it?
It does. Having a mix of early and late types on a team, maybe offering flexible or staggered hours.
It could boost overall productivity. Let people work when they're actually on. Avoid forcing owls to be brilliant at 8 a.m. or larks to pull all-nighters.
It seems like a win-win. People are happier, probably more productive.
Absolutely. And even things like networking look different. Early birds might do breakfast meetings. Night owls kill it at evening events. Each can play to their strengths.
So the takeaway for careers is, tradition favors early birds, but flexibility is key for night owls, and companies benefit from embracing both.
That's a good summary. Respecting chronotype is becoming more recognized as being good for business and for people.
Okay, great. Let's shift focus again. How does this all impact our social lives, our lifestyles outside of work?
Yeah, big impact there too. Think about families. Early risers often sync up easily with young kids' schedules. Morning routines might be smoother.
True, but maybe they're wiped out by 8 p.m.
Exactly. While the night owl parent might struggle getting up, but be wide awake and ready to connect or handle things later in the evening.
So couples with different chronotypes really need to compromise.
Definitely. Lots of negotiation needed there. And then socializing. Night owls clearly have the advantage for late night stuff. Concerts, parties, late dinners.
Yeah, they're just getting started when early birds are thinking about bed.
Right. Which can lead to early risers feeling like they miss out sometimes. Or they might deliberately shift their social life, earlier brunches, daytime activities.
Brunch versus late movie night. Classic example.
Totally. Again, it needs understanding and flexibility between friends and family.
What about how society views it? You mentioned the lazy stereotype for owls.
Yeah, historically, there's been this lionization of the early riser, the early bird gets the worm, all that.
Right.
And negative stereotypes about night owls have definitely existed. It's changing slowly as we understand chronotypes better, but the basic structure of society appointments, school times, work hours still leans early.
Which leads back to that social jet lag for night owls.
Just harder to sync up sometimes. But then again, night owls get that late night peace and quiet, that freedom when the world is asleep.
And early birds get the calm, productive morning hours. So pros and cons for both socially.
Definitely. And relationships can be tricky if schedules are totally mismatched, but sometimes families make it work, like a tag team covering the whole 24 hours.
The 24-hour tag team. I like that. And some cultures are just more late-night oriented, right?
Absolutely. Night owls might feel much more at home in societies where dinner is at 10 p.m. and things stay open late. Ultimately, it's about navigating a world that wasn't designed perfectly for your clock.
Finding ways to make it work, communicating your needs.
Exactly. Flexibility and compromise seem key.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty science. What is the biological clock? What makes someone an owl or a lark?
Okay, so it's all about our internal circadian rhythms. Think of it like a master clock in your brain, in a tiny spot called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN.
SCN, got it. The master clock.
Right. It controls your daily cycles, sleep, wakefulness, hormone release, body temperature. In early types, this whole cycle is just shifted earlier. Melatonin, the sleep hormone, rises and falls earlier. Body temp dips earlier.
And for night owls, it's all delayed.
Exactly. Their natural rhythm runs later. And like we said before, genes play a massive role. Those PER3 and CLO6K genes are really influential. Someone even said changing your chronotype is like trying to change your eye color.
Wow, that puts it strongly.
Yeah.
Is there an evolutionary reason for this variation? Why aren't we all the same?
There's a really cool theory called adaptive heterogeneity.
Okay.
The idea is that back in, hunter-gatherer times, having some folks alert early and others alert late gave the whole group a survival advantage. Someone was always awake, always vigilant.
Like staggered guard duty. That makes evolutionary sense.
Doesn't it? So these differences might actually be beneficial, historically speaking.
Fascinating. What about things in our environment? How much do they influence our clocks?
Oh, hugely. Light is the big one, the most powerful cue. Morning light helps sync you earlier. Evening light, especially blue light from screens, pushes your clock later.
Okay, so managing light exposure is key.
Definitely. And age is another big factor. Little kids are usually larks. Teens famously become owls, and then often people shift back towards morningness as they get older.
Right, the teenage night owl phase is real.
Very real. And lifestyle choices matter too, of course. Staying up late working or socializing will impact your rhythm.
So the big question, can you change your chronotype? If I'm a hardcore night owl, can I force myself to become a 5 a.m. person?
The consensus seems to be kind of, but not entirely. You can shift your schedule, maybe nudge it an hour or two earlier or later with consistent effort.
Okay.
But fundamentally changing your deep-seated genetic predisposition, probably not. A night owl might train themselves to wake up at 7 instead of 9, but they'll likely still feel like a night owl internally. Dr. Bruce said there's only so much you're going to be able to do.
So manage expectations.
Yeah.
Small shifts are possible. Total makeover is less likely.
Pretty much. Younger people might have a bit more wiggle room. And healthy habits like less screen time at night, regular exercise can help shift things earlier, according to some studies, like one at Baylor University. But it's more about moderating extremes, not a complete rewrite.
And what happens if you constantly ignore your chronotype? Force yourself into the wrong schedule.
That's that circadian misalignment or social jet lag we talked about. It's not good. It can mess with hormones, metabolism, focus, mood. It takes a toll, whether you're an early bird forced to stay up late or a night owl forced up early.
So biologically, neither one is better. It's just different timing.
Exactly. They're just different settings on the same biological clock. Neither is inherently superior or healthier if aligned with lifestyle. Some extreme night owls might have a slightly longer natural cycle, but mostly it's just about timing.
Okay. And if you do need to adjust, say, a night owl needing to get up earlier for work, what helps? You mentioned light.
Right. Light management is huge. Get bright light in the morning, avoid it at night. Melatonin supplements, taken carefully in the evening, can help shift sleep earlier for some.
Okay.
Strategic caffeine, used not too late. Short naps can help manage daytime sleepiness. Consistency is key, even on weekends, as much as possible. And just good general sleep hygiene, cool, dark, quiet room, regular wind-down routine.
So lots of tools, but use them smartly and gradually.
That's the idea. Listen to your body, make sustainable changes. Don't fight your biology too hard.
Makes sense. Okay, let's quickly crystallize the strengths and trade-offs for each. Night owls first. Strengths.
Often stronger creative thinking, that evening productivity peak, maybe better adaptability to shift work or irregular hours, that creative potential.
And the trade-offs.
The struggle with the 9-to-5 grind, morning grogginess, those potential health risks of misaligned, sometimes dealing with negative stereotypes, needing more self-discipline for routines.
Got it. Now, early risers. Strength.
Peak morning productivity, better fit with societal schedules, often more consistent sleep, often perceived as reliable, having that dedicated morning time for exercise or focus.
And their trade-offs.
Sacrificing evening social or leisure time, potential energy slumps later in the day, finding late nights difficult, that feeling of needing to sleep early even if things are happening.
Yeah, it really paints a picture of two distinct ways of being, neither perfect, just different. So can we blend them? Can you get the best of both worlds somehow?
I think you can try, yeah. It's about being smart and flexible. One idea is splitting your day, aim for focused work during your natural peak, maybe morning for a lark, evening for an owl, but perhaps find a secondary peak time too, with a good break in between.
Like a siesta, almost.
Yeah.
Recharge and go again.
Sort of, yeah. Or just consciously matching tasks to energy. Do the hard stuff when you're sharpest. Save easier things for lower energy times.
And that idea of teamwork to chronotype collaboration. If you work with others, maybe stagger start times.
Exactly. Leverage each other's peak hours. And personally, if you want to shift your schedule, remember, gradual adjustments. Little by little, like that Baylor research linked to healthier habits helping the shift.
And always prioritize sleep itself, right?
Girl.
Quality and duration matter no matter when you sleep.
Absolutely. That concept of anchor sleep is useful. Get a solid block of core sleep consistently, even if the edges fluctuate a bit.
What about naps and caffeine?
Use them strategically. Short power naps, maybe 20 minutes, can recharge you. Caffeine, used moderately and not too close to bedtime, can help alertness, but don't rely on them to paper over chronic sleep debt.
And socially.
Communicate. Be open about your needs with partners, family, friends. Find compromises. Maybe the Lark handles early mornings, the Owl handles late evenings.
So this hybrid idea is really about self-awareness, flexibility, maximizing your good hours, and protecting your health.
Precisely. Know yourself, work with your biology as much as possible, and integrate helpful habits sustainably. People often find a natural balance as life changes anyway.
Right. Now, to help everyone visualize this, we've put together a comparison table. It lays out early risers versus night owls side by side on all the things we've discussed.
Yeah, it covers peak energy times, sleep patterns, productivity strengths, creativity, cognition, health trends, career fit, social life, habits, biology, adaptability. It's a really good snapshot.
It should be helpful.
And it just reinforces that main point. Both types have unique strengths. Neither is inherently better. Problems mainly come from that misalignment between your internal clock and your external world.
So the big takeaway for you listening has to be know yourself. Really pay attention to your natural energy patterns. And then try, as much as life allows, to structure things around that rhythm. If you're an owl, work on those sleep strategies to counter the downsides. If you're a lark, maybe find ways to still enjoy some evenings without wrecking your schedule.
And it is encouraging, I think, that the world seems to be slowly waking up to this diversity. More flexible work, more understanding.
Hopefully. There's room for everyone to thrive. Okay, so here's a final thought for you to take away. How could really understanding your own chronotype lead to, practical improvements in your daily life right now? Your energy, your well-being. What's maybe one small change, one experiment you could try based on all this?
Yeah. Maybe shifting just one important task. Or focusing on a more consistent bedtime, even if it's late.
Exactly. Something small to start with, worth thinking about. We hope this deep dive gave you some really useful insights.